Good morning, and welcome to White Bear Unitarian Universalist Church. We're delighted to have you here, both those in this space and those attending virtually. It is good to be together, a community of youth, adults, and children, sharing the values of courage, reverence, and compassion. I'm Jim Van Ostrand, serving on your board of directors. I use pronouns he, him, his. Every Sunday, our ministry team will be running a brief social hour beginning 5 minutes after the postlude. Please join us in person or via Zoom. It is a 20-minute session of conversation and sharing designed to provide a deep and intentional welcome to all. If you prefer an informal time of mingling, feel free to do so in the Emerson alcove. If you have a request for today's meditation, please place it in the prayer bowl or in the Zoom chat box. If you're new today, please fill out a guest card. You can find one at the Welcome Center or in the chat box. And please be sure to sign up to be part of our e-news mailing list, where you'll learn about everything happening here at WBUUC. Our new technology allows us to show a wider view of the sanctuary to our online viewers. If you do not want to be on the live stream or in the archive recordings on YouTube, you may sit in the west section of the sanctuary, or in the balcony. West side's over here. We are beginning to offer more programming, including a class on our global UU faith on Wednesday evening that Reverend Roger is teaching, as well as a virtual retreat on Friday evening and Saturday that Reverend Roger is also heading. Besides myself, service participants today include Reverend Jack, Nico Van Ostrand, Clara Hall, and Reverend Roger, with behind-the-scenes support from Aaron Scott. Music today is from the OK Factor and Jody McCormick. Welcome to our church. Together we grow our souls and serve the world in love.
Come into this place which we make holy by our presence. Come in with all your vulnerabilities and strengths, fears and anxieties, loves and hopes, for here you need not hide, nor pretend, nor be anything other than who you are and who you are called to be. Come into this place where we can touch and be touched, heal and be healed, forgive and be forgiven. Come into this place where the ordinary is sanctified, the human is celebrated, the compassionate is expected. Come into this place. Together, we make it a holy place. Clara Hall will lead us in our chalice lighting today.
Hello, everyone. This month's theme is Wonder, the practice of moving slowly. During the hustle and bustle of the holiday season, it is so important to slow down and reflect. Over the summer, I had the opportunity to go to the Boundary Waters for a week. It gave me the chance to be away from the real world for a while and refresh myself in nature. I would spend nights just staring up at the stars and thinking about life. During the day, I paddled for hours on end. With each stroke, I was able to forget about all of my anxieties and just be. I will be forever grateful for how this experience taught me to find time in my everyday life to reflect and find a sense of peace. Today, I light this chalice for the wonders of nature.
Please join me in the opening words. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Our opening hymn this morning is number 221, Light One Candle. We're still 2 weeks away from having a song leader, but please rise in body or spirit and hum along or sing if you're on Zoom.
One of my favorite ways to approach a story is to search for the character that most closely resembles me. I pay attention to strengths, weaknesses, habits, identities, struggles, and pick out a character with whom I have a lot in common. Then I search for the invitation. What lessons is this character learning that I might need in my own life? How are they taking on a difficult decision in the story? And might I do something similar out here in reality? I find that this practice deepens my connection to whatever story I am engaging with, and I invite you to try it out this morning. This morning's story is Zen's Story, adapted by Sarah Conover in Kindness, a treasury of Buddhist wisdom for children and parents. So as I read, find the character that is most like you today, and then pay attention to what that character is calling you to do. About a century and a half ago in Japan, there lived a Zen Buddhist teacher named Nanin. One day, a university professor came to call on Nanin in the temple because he wanted to learn more about Zen. Come in for some tea," said Nanin, leading the professor into the tea room. They sat across from one another at a small, bare table. And for a long time, the old master sat in silence, perfectly at ease. Sometimes he smiled at the professor warmly. Sometimes he gazed out of the window at the garden outside. But the professor grew more and more impatient and uncomfortable with the silence. He squirmed, he tapped his fingers nervously. He looked around impatiently for the tea to arrive. Until finally, the professor found the silence so unbearable that he began to fill the silence by doing what he does best. The professor cleared his throat and began to recite a lecture on Buddhism that he'd just given at the university. The old master, Nanin, made a fine audience. He nodded in a friendly way at the professor's most outstanding points and seemed to have a look of unending curiosity. So the professor kept talking. After a half hour, still no tea had arrived, but the professor was so wrapped up in his speech that he had completely forgotten about the tea and even the purpose of his visit. He was so consumed by his own lecture, in fact, that he didn't even notice when, at last, an attendant carried in an elegant tray with a ceremonial teapot and 2 cups for the 2 teachers. The professor lectured on while Nanan smiled and deliberately placed a teacup before his chattering guest, then slowly began to pour the tea into the professor's cup. He poured and poured and poured and poured some more until the tea overflowed the cup and covered the whole table. Finally, this was enough to get the professor's attention. "What are you doing?" the professor sputtered. "Can't you see that there's no more room in this cup?" Nanan looked kindly at his visitor and replied, "Just like the cup, Professor, you are overflowing. Let us first empty our cups, then together we can learn."
Gathered together as we are right now, with about 25 people in the room and 50 households on Zoom. Let's pause for a moment of stillness and practice and exercise the concentric circles of mindful meditation. As you feel the room around you slow down and settle into a moment of stillness, feel that same sense of stillness and slowness within you. Settle into a moment of peace and calm. Notice the expansiveness of your lungs as you deeply breathe in peace and breathe out love. Sending that love and that sense of peace to whatever part of you needs it the most right now. Breathe in peace and breathe out love. Thinking next about the neighbors around you, those in your immediate vicinity. Consider the stresses and the challenges swirling inside and around them right now. Know that every person around you has come to this exact moment through a journey of 1,000 steps. They have their own complexity and a rich interior. They are holding joys and sorrows, great and small. For just a moment as we rest here, breathe in a deep and abiding sense of peace, and breathe out a tender sense of love for those around you. Next, taking a moment to think of a person in your life that challenges you or frustrates you. It might be a person in your family or a coworker, a fellow student or playmate. Think of that person as a beloved person, a person who is special to many other people. Ponder their complexity and cherish their inherent worth and dignity. Breathing in a sense of peace and balance. Breathing out a sense of love and acceptance. And lastly, think more broadly of a whole community to which you belong. Maybe this church or a school, a city or a neighborhood. Pausing for a moment, taking time away from time, cherishing the sense of community, the snow, the warmth, the friendships. We breathe in together a breath of peace and stability, and we breathe out a sense of community and belonging. Today, our community is holding these people in love and light. Helen Gallagher, as she continues to recover from long-haul COVID and has had to take a leave of absence from work. For all of our relatives who may be lonely, cold, or hungry. For my sweet Uncle Dan, lost this week to COVID, a 70-year-old who should have been there to make music with his grandchildren for many years to come. For speedy recovery for Joe, suffering from a neurological disease. Strength to Elise and the kiddos. For Todd and Cindy, may Todd recover from his severe neck injury. and Jan Crawley, as she's mourning the death of her husband, Dan. Dan died peacefully on Friday, shortly after transitioning into hospice. And now from this place of stillness, we speak out loud the names of those we're holding in our hearts. Trusting that we can hold this all together. Blessed be, and amen.
This Sunday, our special collection is for the Unitarian Universalist Empowerment Scholarship Fund. Tuition is getting increasingly difficult for students to afford, even at a community college like Century College. Through the generosity of our members in 2018, WBUUC donated a sum of money that created an endowment and scholarship fund at Century College. The special collection today helps to grow that endowment with hopes of increasing the amount of the annual scholarship we give. As always, you can donate in 3 ways: on the WBUUC webpage, or send a check, or leave a check in the locked box outside the office, or you can use the text to give option. No matter how you give, please indicate the keyword Century. Thank you for your generosity and your faith in this life we live together.
Our first reading is from Winter Solstice by Rebecca Parker. Let there be a season when holiness is heard and the splendor of living is revealed. Stunned to stillness by beauty, we remember who we are and why we are here. There are inexplicable mysteries. We are not alone. In the universe, there moves a wild one whose gestures alter Earth's axis toward love. In the immense darkness, everything spins with joy. The cosmos enfolds us. We are caught in a web of stars, cradled in a swaying embrace, rocked by the holy night, babes of the universe. Let this be the time we wake to life, like spring wakes in the moment of winter solstice. Our second reading is from Yes, No by Mary Oliver. How important it is to walk along, not in haste, but slowly, looking at everything and calling out, yes, no, the swan, for all his pomp, his robes of grass and petals, wants only to be allowed to live on the nameless pond. The catbrier is without fault. The water thrushes down among the sloppy rocks are going crazy with happiness. Imagination is better than a sharp instrument. To pay attention, this is our endless and proper work. And our final reading is On Thy Wondrous Works I Will Meditate, Psalm 145 by Mary Oliver. Every morning I want to kneel down on the golden cloth of the sand and say, some kind of musical thanks for the world that is happening again, another day. From the shawl of wind coming out of the west to the firm green flesh of the melon, lately sliced open, and eaten, its chill and ample body flavored with mercy. I want to be worthy of what? Glory? Yes, unimaginable glory. O Lord of melons, of mercy, though I am not ready nor worthy, I am climbing toward you.
To pay attention, this is our endless and proper work. I love that line from the poem by Mary Oliver. And it seems like paying attention should have been a lot easier during these last 22 months, at least for some of us. Less traveling, fewer occasions to spend time with family and friends, fewer restaurant, concert, and sporting outings, more time sitting around. This has characterized many of our lives, well, unless you have kids in school. Then, these last months have been characterized by struggling to have a life while intensively helping your kids function first in virtual school and then in COVID-saturated school. Such folks are probably not doing a lot of sitting around, but some of the rest of us are. And even though I theoretically have had more time, more space to pay attention over these last months, I have mostly not taken that opportunity. When Nico introduced the reading today and invited us to figure out which character we might feel kinship with, sadly, it was the long-winded professor for me. So, even with this pandemic, even with seemingly more time and spaciousness in my life, the distractions, the diversions, the monkey mind have sucked all my attention. I even have to confess I watched Tiger King. So my attention span itself seems to have shrunk. And of course, there's been a boatload of anxiety. Anxiety about the pandemic, which seems to stretch on and on and on, no end in sight. Anxiety about our ailing democracy, anxiety about the apparently imminent loss for women of the right to make choices about their own bodies, anxiety about unabated racism, just to name a few things. And this has all felt pretty overwhelming. There is a cacophony of noise in my life and in my head, even if I'm not going to big parties or crowded restaurants. Paying attention feels harder, not easier. It feels like I've spent the last 22 months mindlessly pouring tea into an overflowing cup. So this difficult, distracting moment in time asks us to focus even more than usual, if we can, on creating and cultivating opportunities for paying attention. And so I invite you to join me this season of Advent and Solstice in trying to at least find a few occasions to pay more attention. It is time to do some emptying of our teacups and ourselves. Advent, the month before Christmas, is one of my favorite times of the year. It is a season of waiting. In the mythical story of Jesus' birth, Mary has this long wait after the archangel Gabriel shares the unexpected news that she's going to have a baby. As with every pregnancy, that waiting gets more intense in the last month or two. And for Mary, it is a complicated time and place to have a baby. At the last minute, a census is required by the Roman occupiers, and she and Joseph have to venture to Bethlehem. Giving birth to her baby in a stable was not in her plan. The Advent season and the Christmas story draw on the ancient wisdoms of the solstice season. In northern countries, this time of year is characterized by shorter days, long nights, coldness, and mystery. It's a season of fallowness, and so we wait. We wait for the sun to begin its return. We wait for the warmth to begin to come back, for spring to come, for the grass and the flowers and the trees to burst forth again. The rituals of the winter solstice season invite us to sink into, to notice, to embrace the cold, the darkness, the fallowness of the earth. It even invites us to sink into and embrace the waiting. It's a season to sit in a chair with a blanket after attentively pouring a steaming cup of tea, and then sitting and contemplating our lives in life, capital L. It is a season to light an additional candle each week as we move toward the Christmas season, symbolically reminding us to try to make room in our hearts. It's a season to pay attention to the little things. It is an opportunity to do our endless and proper work of paying attention. I think about times in my life where I've really paid attention, and I invite you to think about times in your life. One time that comes to mind for me is an annual hike that I would take in the winter up to Shoe Lake in northern Wisconsin. Shoe Lake is a quiet lake up in the Nicolet National Forest. There are only 2 human dwellings on Shoe Lake. I've never seen another person on the lake. So trudging along on my way to the lake on a wintry day much like this, every step I take sounds in the snow. After 20 or so minutes, I pull off the old logging road and wade through deep snow down to the lake. Then on the edge of the lake, I stop and I stand as still as I possibly can. The sounds of my feet crunching in the snow have ceased. There is no wind. The trees stand tall, still as giant statues. No waves lap onto the shore of the frozen lake. I cannot hear any cars or nearby roads or snowmobiles. Sometimes snow gently and noiselessly falls. All is quiet, absolutely quiet. The silence is stunning and arresting. I hold my breath so even that sound ceases. It is a sacred moment. The expansiveness of the silence fills my soul. I feel one with the frozen lake, the snow, the still giant trees. I am paying attention to all of it. I am empty of all but the scene of which I am a part. I experienced a different form of attentiveness when I visited the village of Banay on Negros Island in the Philippines. The congregation I served in Appleton, Wisconsin had a partner church in the Philippines in Banay. So I went to visit there once, and unlike Shoe Lake, this was not a quiet place, starting with the dozens of roosters crowing at 4:30 in the morning. After figuring out that the roosters were not likely to stop crowing anytime soon, I venture outside from the church where I slept. Several people are chatting in the church courtyard as the sun begins to rise in all its splendor. One of the church's two ministers, Giovanni, invites me over to his nearby house. A handyman, Giovanni has built the house. And so I sit and I talk with Giovanni and his family in the house. And then we join several people on a walk around the village and surrounding area. Even though it's only 6 in the morning, the sun is already blistering, sweat is drenching us. We walk along a dirt road with sugar cane towering above us on each side. Our first destination is the village's water source. And even at 6 a.m., it is all a bustle with people washing and gathering water. From the water source, we continue our walk. One of the church members uses a knife to cut down a stalk of the sugar cane, and she whittles off the ends and gives us a stalk to chew on. The moist sweetness is unlike anything I've had. We make our way to the congregation president's house, where there is a fabulous pre-breakfast snack of chicken and pasta and fruit and a bunch of other stuff. The snack is capped off by going into the front yard, where another church member has gathered coconuts from the coconut tree, slashes them open, and gives us that coconut water to drink. And there's nothing like that on a hot day. The morning has been full of conversation as we talked with each other and walked along. Conversation about our lives, about the beauty of the land they live in, about God, about how the incarnations of our UU faiths in the Philippines and in the United States are so very different and yet also in some ways alike. Lots contributed to the magic of that morning in Banay. Maybe most important was that I somehow was able to be present the whole time, completely present, savoring each moment with joy, delight, and full attention. That morning, I had no sense of time. I didn't know if this, was this a 5-minute walk or had we been walking for 2 days? Though an entirely different setting from the shores of Shoe Lake, I had a feeling quite similar within. A feeling of peacefulness, equanimity, centeredness, emptiness, and well-being. As Buddhists who meditate and Christians who practice contemplative prayer know, you don't have to travel to the North Woods or to the Philippines to experience how to pay attention, to experience those moments. It is actually possible to be fully attentive wherever we are. So what are some characteristics of these moments of full attentiveness, whether they're quiet or noisy, near or far? These are, first of all, embodied moments. Even for the Buddhist monk who's deep in meditation, there is an important attentiveness, connectedness to the body, to their sitting or walking or pouring tea, for example, or just simply breathing. These are also moments that can open up our imaginations and potentially unleash our creativity. We can imagine in such moments what it might be like to live our lives in a centered, open, peaceful, truly connected way to self, to others, to the world. We can imagine new possibilities for our lives and our world. Our creative juices can get flowing. These moments are also what I would call soulful moments. Kathleen Norris writes about a little girl she met in North Dakota who wrote this about silence. Silence reminds me to take my soul wherever I go. So moments of full attentiveness, whether silent or not, remind us that our soul actually is with us wherever we are. And these are moments that cry out for thanksgiving, indeed for praise. And this is what Mary Oliver means when she says she wants to kneel down on the golden cloth of sand and say some kind of musical thanks for the world that is happening again. I want to share a few more lines from one of those poems that Jack read. Mary Oliver writes, "So it is not hard to understand where God's body is. It is everywhere and everything. Shore and the vast fields of water, the accidental and the intended, over here, over there, and I bow down, participate and attentive. It is so dense and apparent." So I think there's a particular longing in this season of long nights and short days and the cold to see and feel and hear God's body. And if God isn't something that has any meaning to you, substitute something else like love or meaning or connection or life, capital L, or the universe. Oliver reminds us that whatever this is, it is everywhere and it's everything. Advent and solstice help us feel this presence again. Emmanuel is another word for this presence. Emmanuel means, in Hebrew, God with us. The beautiful Advent hymn, O Come, Emmanuel, which we'll hear in a moment, expresses this longing. And so I'll close the sermon with Mary Oliver influenced Advent solstice prayer. O Lord of melons, goddess of quiet ice-covered lakes, God of coconuts, I want to be worthy of what? Glory. Yes, unimaginable glory. Though I am not ready or maybe worthy, I am climbing toward you. I am climbing toward you by paying attention to your creation, to this magnificent blue boat we call home. Our closing hymn today is number 57, All Beautiful, the March of Days. I invite those in this space to rise and join in humming together this hymn, those at home to sing out loud.
As always, feel free to join us for the social hour in the social hall after this morning's postlude. When you arrive, you'll be assigned to a small group. For now, please join me in the closing words. May peace dwell within our hearts and understanding in our minds. May peace still our will and love of truth forever guide us.
May this be a time that we wake to life like spring wakes in the moment of winter solstice. May it be so, and may you go in peace.